In our last video, we talked briefly about John Maynard Keynes and Milton Friedman, the birth of neoliberalism, and how there's no such thing as the free market. Today, I want to level set on one of the most misunderstood labels in political and economic theory: capitalism. In our short attention span world, capitalism is usually thought of in one of two ways. Either it has ushered in an era of unsurpassed technological advances and prosperity, inspired innovation, and made the United States the most powerful and awesome nation in human history, or capitalism by design creates massive inequality, destroys the planet by consuming natural resources, abuses the working class, and co-opts the political process for its own self-serving interests. The answer on the other side. UNFTR. Okay, so which is it? How about neither? At least as it was originally intended. The lazy and reductive way that the right especially talks about capitalism is usually in response to socialism or communism. And you've heard it all before. Socialism has never succeeded. Look at communist China. Look at the Soviet Union, Venezuela, Cuba. Ergo, capitalism is the most successful economic model in human history. But contrast isn't a positive argument. It's a contrasting negative, and that's fine. But it should be noted that Venezuela under Chavez and Maduro, or Cuba under the Castros, that's not pure socialism. Moreover, China isn't and the Soviet Union wasn't purely communism. But that's for another day. Viewing it in a positive light, and I don't mean favorable, I mean practical and independently, the United States has operated with shades of capitalism, but we're still pretty far afield from the origins of the philosophy. And on this, we don't have to guess. A fella named Adam Smith left us a pretty decent book on the whole thing called The Wealth of Nations. So let's put Smith in context before we talk about all the ways that he was taken out of it in the next episode. Smith was an Enlightenment thinker from Scotland who was witnessing the decline of the European nation-states and the birth of the New World in America in real time. A new world with abundant resources was fertile ground for the great minds of the day to break from the feudal shackles of prior periods. But Smith's period also meant that his lens was exclusively agrarian in economic terms during the First Industrial Revolution. So this is still 100 years prior to the Second Industrial Revolution, and understand that he was a social theorist primarily. The field of economics, usually referred to as the dismal science, would develop much later. Smith and others in his time, like Beccaria, Bentham, Rousseau, and Kant, were building on social theories explored by earlier thinkers such as Locke, Hobbes, and Descartes. Smith was in the world's slowest and longest conversation with these other philosophers, trying to make sense of the ever-expanding world coming out of the Renaissance. So where Renaissance thinkers were making sense of the world after the Middle Ages and grappling with questions of human existence and God, Enlightenment theorists were beginning to formulate thoughts on political and economic systems that could improve life on Earth. If you haven't guessed, I like looking at history like it's a series of conversations. Great thinkers responding to the ones that came before, like Milton Friedman writing in response to Keynes, and Keynes responding to the end of monarchical rule in the Great Depression. Now, Marx and Engels, for example, were writing a full century after Smith at the dawn of the Second Industrial Revolution, so their context was entirely different, as the early stages of industry were especially brutal to the working class. But back to capitalism. Importantly, and this one usually turns some heads, Marx was a proponent of capitalism. He actually believed that it was necessary to lift the world out of death, despair, and abject poverty. Yeah, he really did. But he also had a keen grasp of human nature and understood that, left to its own devices, capitalism would necessarily oppress the working class by creating the conditions of inequality. Early Marx was less activist and more theorist. He wasn't advocating for revolution then as much as he was predicting it. In the next segment, we'll explore what Smith really believed, how his ideas grew into the philosophy known as capitalism, and how we've evolved way beyond that into another system entirely. Until then, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget, if you want to support our podcast and help get this show off the ground, head over to UNFTR.com to become a member or purchase some of our native roasted coffee in partnership with native coffee traders. Here endeth the video.